Hello and welcome back, goats, to the Big Blue Purple channel. As you could probably tell by the title, today we're going to be ranking every single normal trial boss in Final Fantasy XIV, A Realm Reborn. Why just A Realm Reborn, you may ask? Well, to that I say, I honestly don't think it's really fair to compare trials from A Realm Reborn to trials from Shadowbringers. They're just on a completely different level of quality. Instead, I've decided I'll be doing a separate boss ranking for each of the expansions. If people like these videos and they'd like to see a complete boss ranking of every normal trial, I'll do one big video at the end. Now I say normal trial, but I'm also going to be including the hard mode trials because realistically, those are the normal mode trials. I mean, who's really going to rank level 20 Ifrit? I will not be talking about the extreme trials in this list as I have not synced all of them, I've only synced a couple of them. And I will not be talking about Odin, because I haven't had the chance to do Odin synced either, and he's technically an extreme trial. And honestly speaking, based on what I've seen from Odin, he would probably be at the top of this list and it wouldn't be even close. Additionally, I will not be talking about Cape Westwind or the Steps of Faith, because neither of those trials are in the game anymore, and let's be honest, both of them suck. And before we get into this trial ranking, I want to give a huge shout out to the 1.5% of you who are subscribed to the Big Blue Purple channel. Hit that big red button for Big Blue Purple and help me out. Let's see if we can get that number up to a whopping 2% by the end of October. So without further ado, let's hop into the 13th spot on our trial ranking today. Coming in at the bottom of the list, we have none other than a Relic Reborn, the Chimera. Now don't get me wrong, there are definitely worse trials that you could end up in roulette, but this video isn't just about which trials I'd want to get in roulette, because if that was the case, this would probably be in the top spot. However, purely speaking, out of the quality of this fight, well, it's pretty much non-existent. No unique music, no unique mechanics, it's just a regular-ass Chimera that you've already fought a million times before. It's very obviously just a filler trial added to the game for the sake of the relic weapons. It's cool that it's there, but honestly, it is nothing interesting in the slightest. I really don't even know what to say about this trial because it's just so nothing. There's nothing interesting about it, there's no unique mechanics, and it takes about 2 seconds to kill even when you're doing it synced. But hey, if I can give it credit for anything, I'm glad to see it in my roulette because I know I'll be in and out of there in about 2 seconds. Next up, coming in at the number 12 spot, we have another Relic Reborn quest, the HYDRA. Honestly, everything I said about the Chimera applies to this trial as well. It's nothing special, there's no unique music, the mechanics aren't interesting, and it's just a really quick fight that you wash in a couple of seconds. Yet another case of just kind of a filler quest because they wanted some trials for the relic weapons, I suppose. But I know what you, dear viewer, are thinking right now. Why does he put the HYDRA above the Chimera? The two most debated about bosses in the entire community. On which one you prefer, the HYDRA or the Chimera. Now I'm on hashtag Team HYDRA for life because it looks a bit cooler, I guess. On some real shit though, I didn't even know if I was going to include these guys in the ranking, but for the sake of completing the list and just having everything put down, I decided why the hell not. Now tell me in the comments below, are you hashtag Team Chimera or Team HYDRA? Anyways, let's move on to the next boss at number 11.
Number 11, your father will die.
For my number 11 spot on this tier list, I have the Dragon's Neck, or Ultros and Typhon. Now, the key difference here between this one and the last two is that I would hate getting this in my roulette because I don't like this trial, whereas with the Chimera and the HYDRA, they're obviously the worst trials in the game because they're just so nothing, but they're not annoying. This piece of shit, on the other hand, this fucking trial is so annoying. Getting ringed out, knocked out of the ring, and just not being able to do anything for like 15 seconds, or even worse, getting turned into an imp for a whole ass minute of the fight, this fight is so goddamn tedious. That being said, I have to give it more credit than the last two as well, because obviously there was effort put into this fight. It's a double boss, they interact with each other relatively well, and it's a somewhat interesting fight. In fact, your first time doing this trial, you probably enjoyed it. I know I did. I thought it was really cool. I enjoyed the questline it was a part of, and overall it wasn't that bad. It's just, the more you do this trial, the more you realize how fucking annoying it is. Having to get a blue mage spell from this trial also probably ruined it a little bit more for me. I don't absolutely hate this trial, but it's just so much wasted potential, and it is so damn annoying to go through. I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion or a shared sentiment, but to me, I don't know how anyone could enjoy being turned into an imp for a minute of the fight and being able to do fuck all. But hey, at least it is URTH'S and Typhon. They're enjoyable, they're funny, but that's about all it has going for it. Coming in at the number 10 spot, we have the CHRYSALIS or Nabrialis. I was kind of torn between placing this at either number 10 or number 9, but I mean the trial after this is perfectly interchangeable with it. I just enjoy it slightly more, or rather hate it slightly less. Now in terms of the staging of this fight and the whole build up to it and the arena itself, it's really not that bad. In fact, it's pretty damn cool. The problem with this fight lies solely in the mechanics of it. In terms of mechanics, this fight is so fucking sleeper mode, dude. Getting this trial in roulette makes me want to go straight to bed. So, what are the mechanics, you may ask, if you haven't experienced this fight yourself somehow? Well, all you do is walk around dodging this guy's really boring line AoEs until he decides to stand in the middle, go invulnerable, and summon a bunch of fucking orbs that you have to just go run around and run into to stop them from reaching the boss. You need to rotate between the two colors to avoid getting too many debuffs, and it's just so annoying. This phase lasts for a really long time, where you're just running in a circle, picking up orbs, you have no uptime, you're not doing anything with your rotation. It just feels so, like, disconnected from the gameplay, and you're just fucking walking around working retail. I'd still probably rather do this trial than URTH'S and Typhon, because at least when you're running around and picking up orbs, it's still more engaging than being a fucking water imp for 60 seconds. Also considering the fact that this is a fucking Asian trial, like an Asian, and it's this lame, it's just so disappointing. Granted, Nabrialis is a really lame Asian, but hey, they could have made the fight somewhat cool, right? Also, here's the real kicker for when you get this bitch in trial roulette, okay? Let's say you're not playing DPS because you like playing tank or healer. If your DPS in your party don't know that they're supposed to limit break the ethereal tear in the second part of the fight right at the end, you will wipe and you will do all of the collecting orbs bullshit again for another 5 minutes. Thankfully, this is pretty uncommon if you're with a couple of people who have done it before, and hey, if you see that people are new, just say something in chat and you can avoid it altogether. I don't know if this is a harsh spot for this trial or if there's actually people out here who really fuck with this trial, but I think this is one of the most sleeper mode, boring ass trials in the entire game. The only reason this trial sits above the other ones we've ranked so far is that they obviously put some time into it and didn't just slap a Chimera into a boss arena and let 8 people fight it. At least the fight has mechanics, however dog shit they might be. And yet again, this trial still sits comfortably above URTH'S and Typhon because running in circles picking up orbs still beats getting turned into a fucking imp. Now coming in at our number 9 spot is Battle on the Big Bridge, or the first Gilgamesh fight. Now considering how much I hated on the imp mechanic in URTH'S and Typhon, you might be a little surprised to see this fight above the CHRYSALIS. Because you guessed it, you get turned into a frog in this fight as opposed to an imp, and you can't do anything at all. But to me, there's something that's just so like flirting versus harassment with those two trials. I don't love this trial or anything, and it's still pretty low on the list, and it's below Leviathan, which should tell you something. But it's kind of funny when you get turned into a frog and you have to run away from a chicken for like 30 seconds, and only one person gets turned into the frog until part 2, and hey, if you kill him fast enough in part 2, it's really not going to matter that much. I think it all just comes down to the whole theming, the character, the quest line. Everything that goes into this trial just makes it a lot more enjoyable than URTH'S and Typhon, even though they're from the same quest line. It's just this one is much more enjoyable in my opinion. Like, yeah, this fight has some fucking annoying bullshit with the frog, but it also has some cool mechanics, and it's overall not that bad of a fight. In fact, now that I'm sitting here talking about it, I feel kind of bad putting this below Leviathan. That being said, Gilgamesh has a much, much better trial that we're going to get to later in this list. If it wasn't made obvious by my previous comments, coming in at the number 8 spot, we have none other then Leviathan. Now here's the thing with Leviathan, okay? I don't love fighting this boss. I think it's actually really fucking annoying. Getting to use the elemental conversion thing is just tedious and people fuck it up all the time. I fuck it up sometimes because depending on the amount of damage you're doing to Leviathan, he might do like extra moves than you would expect before he does his big explosion, and then you activate the shit too early and you get everyone killed. Maybe I'm just stupid, but it feels kind of random when he decides to actually go do the big fucking explosion that you have to block with it. It's not like completely random, it always happens around halfway through the fight, but sometimes he'll do like a big dive across the arena, and sometimes he won't do that and he'll just go straight into it. It's that one particular mechanic that is a downfall to this fight in my opinion. Leviathan as a boss looks fucking amazing. He looks so sick. I wish we had more big-ass sea monsters like this in future expansions. In fact, it's kind of surprising to me that in Stormblood we didn't have some crazy Japanese sea serpent-esque boss. But aside from the elemental converter mechanic, the fight is pretty standard and it's overall not that bad. It's a cool looking boss, the music is solid, it has unique music, which none of the trials we have talked about so far have unique music. So big ups to Leviathan, my boy, with his own unique song. To be honest though, one huge gripe I have with this fight is that they didn't have the balls to take away the side little fucking railings on the arena so that people could fall off. In hard mode Leviathan, you just cannot fall off the platform, it's impossible. And I find that really sad because later on in Heaven's Word with Sophia, they did have the confidence to make a boss that can knock you right off the platform. Call me crazy, but if you can fall off the arena in a trial, it just immediately gives it some extra points. It is so goddamn entertaining to just watch people go flying off the map. Speaking purely from just a normal mode perspective though, and just looking at the fight as kind of a trial, I don't hate it, I just think it's kind of average. I think with Leviathan, we're starting to enter the more C-tier territory, where the last few have all been D-tier. Maybe you could argue that the first Gilgamesh is what brings it up to kind of C-tier. At the end of this video, I'll go ahead and share a picture of my tier list, just so it kind of makes more sense in that regard. I know we all love tier lists nowadays, let's be honest. Otherwise though, there's just kind of not a whole lot to say about Leviathan. It's not an awful trial. The elemental converter is annoying to deal with random sometimes, but it doesn't completely ruin the experience to me. The arena is cool, the boss is cool, you get to hit his head and his tail. Overall, a lot of work was clearly put into this trial. They didn't just slap it together in 5 minutes like some of the last ones. On some real shit though, Leviathan's design is just high-key carrying him for me right now. This boss could be so much lower if he didn't look as cool as he did. Now coming in at number 7 is actually a trial that got reworked pretty recently, and it got reworked for the complete better. This is Good King Mogglemaug, also known as Thorn March Hard. It's pretty crazy too, because if we're talking about the original Thorn March, I would have put this shit at the fucking rock bottom of the list. Having to kill the Moogles in a specific order and having to memorize that, or listen to the song because it tells you what order you have to kill them in. Oh my god, this trial was just such a pain in the dick back in the day. And back in the day, I mean like a year ago, because that's how long I've been playing this game. The music isn't really my personal cup of tea, but I have to respect it for what it is. It's like this Moogle musical, and it's kind of funny, and I fuck with what they were going for with it. Also, this is a trial that's like kind of grown on me a bit, because when I was new to this game, I didn't like the Moogles, I thought they were annoying, I didn't know shit about them. But as you play 14 more and more, you start to like Moogles. They get you with that. That's how Square Enix gets you, alright? But I fuck with the Moogles now, so I fuck with this trial a little bit more. Is it amazing? Is it a great trial? Absolutely not. But is it an okay trial that's kind of fun to play? Sure. The way they reworked this fight to have the Moogles fight with each other as opposed to having their own separate health bars where you have to kill them in a specific order. No, like the king summons his Moogles and they do certain attacks that you have to avoid and pay attention to. That's really cool, and it feels much more fluid with how the game is supposed to play. You also get to dance with the Moogles in the middle of the fight, so hey, can't complain about that. I just really can't stress enough how amazing this rework was to this fight, and I really, really hope they go back to something like Odin and they rework it so that the one that exists now turns into an extreme, and they give us some sort of a normal mode so more people can experience that fight. Having a trial reworked like this, though, just gives me hope that maybe some shit like Nabrialis or Ultros and Typhon will be improved upon in later patches. Kinda crazy that we're already at the middle of the list and I still haven't talked about any of the trials I actually really like. But it also kinda goes to show that, hey, a lot of the trials we got in A Realm Reborn are kinda mid. Coming in at our number 6 spot on the trials tier list, just outside of our top 5, poor Ifrit, he deserved better. I just want to stress the fact that the Bowl of Embers Hard is a substantially better trial than the other 7 that we've talked about up until this point. Ifrit has a raw-ass design, he looks cool as shit, his arena looks cool as shit. The big downfall for Ifrit, as opposed to his other primal friends, is that his music is pretty mid. I like the mechanics in this fight. I like the more dodgy AoE focus where he just puts a bunch of fire on the ground and you gotta stay away from it. I like the nails that you have to destroy and meet a DPS check for. It just feels like a complete and well thought out fight. It's not a hard fight, it's one of the most simplistic trials in the game in fact, but it's that simplistic trial done very, very well. This is one of those trials I'm kind of happy to see when I get it in roulette. And it's not like a happy like the HYDRA or the CHIMERA where I'm like, oh, I'm going to be out in a minute. It's like, I'm going to be out in a minute and I like fighting Ifrit because he looks cool as fuck. It almost feels criminal to put him at number 6 when I really feel like he deserves to be in that top 5 territory. It's just unfortunately there are 5 trials in A Realm Reborn that I think are better than Ifrit. This is also where we get into the kind of category of trials that I would like to try on extreme difficulty. The only A Realm Reborn primal that I've synced on extreme is Rama, and I did that completely by accident because I queued for it in the Duty Finder and probably pissed a bunch of mentors off. But hey, we cleared it. We did clear it. It took some practice, but we cleared it. And that was my first experience ever doing it in extreme, but hey, I'm talking about Rama on the Ifrit section. Either way, you probably get what I mean. This is kind of where we get into the trials that are probably a good amount of fun when you do them with proper mechanics that are designed to be more challenging. Also, a lot of the normal trials we talked about don't even have an extreme difficulty, so. Anyways, next up on the list, coming in at our number 5 spot, entering our top 5 A Realm Reborn trials. That's right, we're talking about Garuda, or the Howling Eye Hard. Now, Garuda and Ifrit are very interchangeable to me. But you know what Garuda has that Ifrit doesn't? A fucking banger of a boss theme, dude. I'm telling you. The theme that plays in the Garuda fight, the way it syncs up with that cutscene, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I love it. In terms of the mechanics themselves and the fight, I really do feel pretty much the same about it as I do Ifrit. It's really simplistic, you just wail on the boss. Sometimes you need to mind your positioning due to certain attacks. It's simple, but it's fun. And it's not very punishing, so even if you don't know what you're doing, you're not going to die, let's be honest. Granted, we are talking about A Realm Reborn normal mode trials right now, so it's pretty hard to die in all of them. I like Garuda's design, I like the arena, I like the part in the story that she's involved with, even though we're talking about, hard mode, which isn't really connected to the story as much. But the original Garuda fight and, the cutscene that comes after it and that kind of part of the story, I think that's where A Realm Reborn really starts to get a lot more interesting. When I was playing through 14 for the first time, Garuda was probably the first trial that really stuck with me. Even though you fight Titan before her, who I absolutely love, and we will get to Titan later, spoiler alert. But Garuda was the first time that a trial really clicked with me, and I was just like, I'm having a lot of fun right now. I think I'm really starting to get into this game. It's fast-paced, it's memorable, everyone remembers Garuda. It's cool. I don't really know what else to say about it other than I just think it's deserving of the number 5 spot. So, in the process of making this video, I just realized that I'm horrible at counting, and there are 14 trials and not 13. So, Garuda is actually in the 6th spot and Ifrit in the 7th, which means that starting our actual top 5 right now, we have Ultima. Now, for the sake of this video, I just got footage from the Extreme trial because I really didn't want to sit through Porta Decumana cutscenes, but I just want to talk about the fight and not the cutscenes in Porta Decumana. I genuinely believe that Ultima is one of the best normal trials in the entire game after the rework. It's just like this nice, dodgy fight. All you have to worry about is what's going on the screen, and you need to react to it. There's no mechanics you need to know ahead of time. The DPS gets to limit break 3 times in the fight if they know what they're doing. It's divided into 2 phases, which are both enjoyable to work through. The way he incorporates all the other primals from the main story into his own moveset is so cool. I just overall love the Ultima fight, and the music is great. And just like the Moggle fight from earlier, it's just such a consideration I have to take that they completely fixed this fight and turned it into something a lot of fun. Like, the old Ultima fight was super tedious because it was at the end of Praetorium, and then he wasn't even the final boss because you just have to beat the shit out of La Habrea, who doesn't even fight back, which has now been turned into its own solo instance, which is so much better. I can't credit the 14 devs enough for doing that, for going back and fixing old content. As a Destiny player, this is something you just don't see. In fact, Square Enix should just be removing this old content from the game if they wanted to take the Bungie approach. I also do have a tad bit of bias for this fight, as I did it on the Unreal difficulty, and it was an absolute blast. Super easy extreme trial, but just really satisfying to pull off correctly. So coming in at our number 4 spot, we have Gilgamesh 2, aka Battle in the Big Keep. I honestly fucking love this trial. There's just something about it. I love getting this trial in roulette. I love replaying this trial with friends for the first time. It's just so cool. I think it's one of the only fights in the entire game that has a cutscene midway through the fight that's actually skippable as well. And it's a sick-ass cutscene, especially considering that it's from a Realm Reborn side content. Now, the first phase of this fight is the weaker segment of it. In fact, if it was its own fight, it probably wouldn't be that high on this list. It's got the same problem as the first Gilgamesh fight, where you kind of get turned into a chicken and you can't do much. But you're fighting Enkidu and Gilgamesh at the same time. It's the culmination of the Hildebrand questline. It's a great moment within the questline, and the bosses are pretty fun. One thing I do actually like about the first phase is the tethers that Enkidu can put on you. They make it so you have to get close to each other to break the tether, whereas typically to break tethers you need to run away from each other. It's just kind of like a mindfuck in the middle of the fight that's funny to watch people mess up. The first phase, again, just really isn't much special, but there's stuff about it that I like, and I would say that even just the first phase of this fight alone is still better than the first Gilgamesh fight to me. That being said, phase 2 of this fight is where shit gets real, okay? Gilgamesh turns into like a Ultima weapon-ass dodgy fight where he throws all these AoEs on the ground that you have to get in between and stay out of, and it is so much fun. I feel like the mechanics in this fight are also just a lot more involved than other normal trials. Even if you don't know what you're doing, you'll definitely still clear. It's not like it's that intense, but the tank has to be more mindful of their positioning in this fight. Gilgamesh jumps around between teammates and does some bullshit that can hit multiple people if the tank's positioning is off. This fight just kind of keeps you on your toes for a normal trial. It's cool, it's exciting, and I just really fuck with it. Also, as someone who really likes the Hildebrand questline, I mean, this fight is just great. This is one of the few Realm Reborn trials that, to my knowledge, hasn't been reworked at all, but still kind of holds up against newer content. It's by no means the best trial in the game, but it doesn't feel as dated as some of the other Realm Reborn trials. I think 4 is a perfectly fair spot for this trial, and honestly, with personal bias, I could see it going higher, but I think there are some trials in this game that I like just a little bit more. And now we're entering the top 3 trials in A Realm Reborn, starting off with the number 3 spot, which is Shiva. Now, I know Shiva is probably a number 1 for a lot of people, and I can totally see why. The music, the arena, the story moment, everything about this trial, it's honestly fantastic, and it's one of the most memorable trials from A Realm Reborn. Just like I said about Ultima and Gilgamesh, Shiva's a very dodgy fight where you just need to react to what you're seeing on the screen and try to avoid all the AoEs. There's a cool little transitory phase in the middle of the fight where she freezes the whole team and then breaks them all out of the ice. Really, really cool. No pun intended. The only reason Shiva is below the next 2 trials on this list is because I feel like mechanically the fight isn't as interesting as the next 2 fights we're going to talk about. In terms of everything else, it just nails all of it. In terms of A Realm Reborn, this is as good as it's going to get for a trial, minus the next 2. Shiva really just is the cooler Garuda, quite literally. I feel like I really have the least to say about Shiva of any trial. It's just so simply good. Oblivion is one of the best songs in the entirety of the game, in my opinion, and then they went on to top it with Return to Oblivion in Shadowbringers somehow. God, I love that version of the song, but I love both versions of the song so much, and this trial just amazing fucking music. And if the music is good in a trial more often than not, it can really, really bring up the experience. Anyways, coming in at the number 2 spot on the list, we have the Striking Tree Harp, aka Rama. I fucking love this trial. I don't even know what else to say. This is such a cool trial. The arena, the design of the boss, the purple thunderstorm kind of aesthetic of it, the music, the mechanics, the whole fight for a hard mode trial. It's just one of the best trials in all of Realm Reborn. Arguably the best. And it could definitely be swapped to the number 1 spot depending on how I'm feeling. All this being said, Rama, being my first extreme trial that I ever did, definitely affects the way I look at this boss. I just hold him in a much higher regard than I think other players might. Even putting my bias to the side though, I feel like for a hard mode trial, Rama is actually much more jam-packed with mechanics than any of the other ones. The mechanics in Rama really feel like they build off of all the mechanics from previous trials. You have the ads that you need to deal with, kind of like Ifrit's Nails, because he'll wipe your team if you don't kill them fast enough. He has the orb mechanic, so people need to pick up orbs. He has the seduction mechanic, where he can basically seduce a player, and to free them, you need to go strike them with a little lightning AoE. He also has the tether mechanic, where 2 players will get tethered to each other, and to get rid of it, they have to each pick up 3 orbs total. It's not like he's some super mechanically complex and difficult fight, but in terms of a normal mode, or I guess a hard mode trial, it's a lot more than the other ones have. All that topped off by the fact that he is one of the coolest looking bosses in the entire goddamn game. My Rama mount from URTH'S is my favorite mount that I have right now. Absolutely love that thing. Rama is just a fucking badass, man. I mean, look at how long that beard is, dude. Nobody is pulling off a beard like Rama. With all the good I'm saying about him, you may be surprised he's not the number 1 spot. And if you're paying attention, you probably already know who the number 1 spot is. So let's get into it. Coming in at the top spot of this big blue boss ranking of the trials in Final Fantasy XIV, we're talking about Titan, baby. My favorite normal mode trial in all of A Realm Reborn. Now, if you recall back to the Leviathan section of this video, I said a trial gets extra points if you get to fall off the map, because it's funny to watch people fall off. Guess what? This is the only normal mode trial, or technically hard mode trial, in Final Fantasy XIV, where you can actually fall off the edge in A Realm Reborn. Thankfully, after A Realm Reborn, the devs actually started realizing how funny it is to watch people go flying off the map, and design more normal mode encounters with that in mind. Anyways, let's talk about our boy Titan, alright? This fight has great mechanics and is one of the few normal mode trials in this game where you actually see people dying. He has this Tank Buster Cleave move that the tank needs to position opposite of the party. If they don't, people are going to get flung off the fucking edge. He does several AoEs that are fun to avoid. They come out slow enough to where you can react to them, but fast enough to where it feels like you just barely got out of the way in time. He also puts these boulder bombs on the ground that you need to keep track of what order they landed in, so you can position yourself accordingly, right? As the first set of bombs land, you want to stand far away from them, and then as the first set of bombs go off, you want to go stand where they were. This is kind of like a really simple, basically the same thing as dodging an AoE, but because it's designed differently, you see people get tripped up by it a lot and die to it. And it's so entertaining, man, because it doesn't ruin the trial when someone dies to this. It's just funny to watch. On top of this, he also does his big butt slam move where he jumps up into the air and slams back down to the ground. He's so heavy, in fact, that he destroys the corner of the arena, or the edge around the arena. If you played Wii Sports Resort, the fucking sword fighter mode, that's what it's like fighting Titan, okay? The arena slowly gets smaller until you're the only one left standing. Also, I haven't even mentioned the music for this fight yet. Holy shit, it's amazing. And I don't just mean a last part of the music, which is the best one, let's be honest, the last phase. But the fact that this entire fight, throughout the entire duration of the fight, there's a different song for each phase that fits kind of the mood of the encounter. Nobody else in A Realm Reborn is doing it like Titan. I'm telling you, Titan's just the fucking goat like that. This is probably the trial that I want to do on extreme difficulty the most out of any A Realm Reborn trial. I really, really hope they make an Unreal version of it, because I'd love to experience this fight like as a difficult fight for the first time. Also, Titan is like the sole reason I want to try the Ultimate raid, because that raid looks so fucking cool when you got Titan, Garuda, Ifrit, and you fight all of them, and they all have their own unique mechanics, and then the Ultima weapon eats all of them. Fucking cool-ass Ultimate raid. I'd really like to try it at some point, but getting 8 people together, getting the time together to just bash my head into an Ultimate raid for weeks on end, potentially. I don't know when I'll get a chance to do it, but hey, one day, I definitely plan on clearing that. Either way, this has been my Big Blue boss ranking of all the bosses in this game. I'd love to see your lists in the comments below. Tell me how wrong I am. Tell me how much you hate my guts for ranking your trial lower than another trial. Just let me know in the comments below. What's your favorite trial in the game? Which trial do you hate the most? What do you think is the hottest take I have on this list? Etc, etc. And just thanks again, goats, for all the support on the channel lately. I never thought I'd be seeing numbers this big this soon. I really, really appreciate you all. Let's try to hit that 1,000 subscriber mark by the end of 2022. Here is the tier list I promised earlier in the video. This is probably how I'd line it up if I had to put it on a tier list. Now go get out there and do your trial roulette, I guess. I don't know.